Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special show planned for you at Blue Note this evening. A live interview with the one and only Natasha Chomko, or as you all know her, Postwook.
All right, what's up, everybody? This is a new show, a new set, a new scene, a new everything. And I am so glad to be here. Before we get started, I just wanted to say to one of my best friends in the world and someone I've known since I was 6 years old, Disco. I love you, and I already miss you. We did a show together for a year called Decentralens, and Disco is going to focus more on philanthropic stuff with his sister, and I'm so excited for him. And Disco, I've got a new set, and I have a lot of ideas, and I have a lot of names to figure out how you can create your sets, but you're always there in spirit, and I'm going to raise the right hand because it's always, and you're right there. So salute to you, dude, and to Chad, who taught me to put things on popsicle sticks, because how awesome to have emojis in real life. It's a boomer thing, but I'm Gen X, so I think that's good enough. So welcome, everybody. Postwook, Natasha Chomko, welcome. I am so excited to have you here. And welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
All right, cool. I just got a little distracted because I always like to post in at least one place. So I put it in the AOB spot, and I'm going to get away from that screen because I'm seeing myself in like duplicate. So, Natasha, if you do have your phone on, just put the volume down, put it to the side in case there's a delay, because we're going through the web. So there's always a delay there if you see it on two different screens. But thank you for coming on. You and I were both on Stephen Miller's show, the one who introduced us a couple weeks ago, his year-end color commentary. And, Stephen is the nicest person in the world that he is, and probably one of the best art minds in this space. Was like, hey, go on Blue Show. Everybody should go on Blue Show. And you were the first one to reach out. And I was so excited because you and I already have a connection. I've got Astronomer's Daughter. I collected one of those. I love the collection. We're going to go there in a bit, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I think Steven is our like linchpin, which is fun because he is such a good person. And I have to say, he talks so highly of you. It's such whenever Steven recommends someone to me, I'm like, I have to talk to this person. But the way he talked about you, he was like, he's the best. He's so great. You absolutely want him in your corner. And I was like, these are really kind words. I should really talk to this person. And then, when he was talking about your show, I was like, well, selfishly, I just wanted to talk to you, honestly. It had nothing really to do with anything else. But yeah, no, I'm excited, and it's good to be here. And yeah.
Well, the feeling is definitely mutual. I think we have a little buffer delay, so just know if I'm delayed or if you're delayed. I think that's what it is, but we'll just we'll try and work through it. But Steven's the best. I think that whenever I hear him on color commentary and just speak in general, I'm like, how can someone be so eloquent and waste no words? It's like that movie. I don't know if you ever saw that movie that was made by, it was about East Germany in World War II, where they were spying everybody. It's called The Lives of Others. Literally every frame in that movie, there's no waste, just like the Germans like to do. Very efficient, very good engineers, right? And every clip in that movie is super efficient. I feel like that's Steven. Everything he says is so poignant and right on point. And then I'm just when I talk about stuff, I have to emote and left-handedly dance around things until I kind of get to the crux. And I look at him and I'm just like, God, you're so good at that.
He really is. No, I agree.
Okay, so let's get into it. Normally we talk, I learn a little back about you and stuff like that, but while we do it, I just have to, like, your art is so cool and vivid and vibrant. Like, it's just, I don't know, like I interview artists. You'd think I'd have the greatest vocabulary. I'm just like, it's awesome. You're awesome. But like the vibrancy of these colors and how you use these collages to put things together is just, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Color is my thing. I'll put it that way. I love color. I love like the feeling of what like vibrancy does to your eyes. It's something that like my work kind of, that's like part of the, like, I don't want to say like the secret because it's not a secret, you can see it, but that's like part of what I think makes my work signature to what it actually is like the way that I can like put colors together. And I'm super interested in just like Technicolor, like the film strips. I actually like, I'm working on like a thing where I can like recreate Technicolor in digital. Um, I'm still kind of like formatting it to be what I want it to be, but the whole idea with Technicolor is you get, like 3 film strips, right? Magenta, yellow, and then cyan, and then obviously like the black kind of comes together in there, and it creates like these really vivid colors. But the whole idea is, when in Technicolor, like they looked so vibrant. Like my fiance's favorite movie is Singing in the Rain, which is so random, but like when we watched it, I was, yeah, watching for the plot, but like I was really just watching the Technicolor. Like that's my favorite thing about old movies that are shot in Technicolor, is just looking at the vibrancy of the colors, because I don't feel like digital film does that in a way that like makes, like, it doesn't do it for me in the way that like I want it to be done. So like I am trying to bring that back into people's lives because it makes me so happy, and if it makes me happy, it's got to make others happy. um and I
It,
just like, I find it fascinating. So
yeah, it definitely makes me happy. And I'm glad you explained that, because being a kid of the late 70s, early 80s, the Technicolor was a big part of our childhood. Back in the early days, we only had literally 3 channels and like Saturday morning cartoons, but there was so much from that 60s, early 70s in Technicolor. Because I would always describe this as like these beautiful tertiary colors, but you're saying no, it actually is kind of more technical than that, with this Technicolor and the combination of these 3 film strips.
it's the film strips, and then it's the gel that they put on top of the lights. And like the system of Technicolor is actually like extremely dangerous, because you have to light the scene like super bright to the point where like things can catch on fire. Like it needs to be like about 100 degrees to get everything so white that the Technicolor actually like shines through. So in The Wizard of Oz, like Judy Garland was like overheating in her costume, and like all the like Tin Man and everything, like all of them were, it was like a dangerous set to be on. But like the movie is remembered for the color, and like that's what people know it as. And I find that to be so fascinating, because it's like, I don't know, like I just saw Wicked, the movie adaptation of the musical adaptation of the book, right?
Right.
And I liked it a lot. I thought the plot was incredible. I thought that the costumes, the set design, absolutely fantastic. The coloring was very contemporary. Like this
Hmm.
digital film that we shoot on is all, if you shoot it in raw, it all is like gray basically, and it's kind of ugly. And then you have to like color it yourself. And like I'm watching these films and I'm like, I want to change the way that we do this. Like I want, maybe not me single-handedly, but like I see a vacuum and I'm like, I want this to be different. So one of the things actually that like is on my list of, we can get into I have like a crazy like time management regime basically, because like I have horrible time management skills, and if I don't literally give myself like a menu of things to do, I won't do anything. And I've learned that about myself. So one of the things I want to learn how to do next year is like the color grading that I want in like films, because I just don't see it the way that I want it. And I'm like, I clearly like I'm being called in some way to like do that. Maybe not like, you know, for Hollywood, but like just in general, like I want to do that, you know? And I think that like the movie was fantastic. I really don't want to say anything bad about it because it was so good. It was just the
Right.
way that some of it was colored. I was like, have we fired all of the color grading specialists?
It's interesting
Like, I
because
know a few of them.
I'm looking right here, and the color, it's interesting. But then if we go back to your stuff, and I in your art and the more Technicolor, they could have made this so much more. I'm going to use the word magical, but they could have made it so much more and really tied it back in to the original Wizard of Oz. Like it's almost, it almost feels like to me, now that you've explained it, kind of like this lost moment of, yeah, the colors are cool. And like you said, they're contemporary, but there's something historical and earthly missing about them. It feels very, I don't know. It doesn't feel as grounded as it should, and as grounded as your art is. Is that fair?
It is. And really quick, just type in Dancing Through Life Wicked movie and you'll see like more of the colors that I'm talking about that like really I thought like missed the mark on like what the beauty of like film grading should be.
I see that once again, the responsibility to corrupt my fellow.
Oh, this might just be the song.
Oh, boo. Lame.
Just like find like a screen grab of it, because like it's super backlit and like it's just very gray. I mean, the choreo in that scene is fantastic, and like I absolutely loved what they did with it beyond like what Broadway can do. I thought it was really cool, but it just like I don't know, like the one of Fiero at the top will be fine, like the one of the guy in the window, like that's a good example. It's just like, to me, it felt this just feels super backlit to me. It just feels like super, like you clearly filmed this on digital film.
Yeah.
Like,
this is a red
you know what
camera
I mean?
for
like,
sure.
And I'm just like, I get it that like, there's probably reasons for this. The people who work on these things are brilliant and fantastic, and they have, you know, people they have to appease. And I understand why they probably had to make the choices that they did. I just feel like we can get so much further with the art that we're making by like increasing the like vibrancy, especially like there have been studies done on color, and like we are losing options for colors in our everyday life, you know? And like a big thing that I learned this year was like my colors, right? Like what my skin tone and my like hair and everything,
Right.
like what colors look good on me. Ironically, it's a whole bunch of jewel tones and super bold colors, like shocker. You know, it's kind of funny that that's what it is, but it's just like emerald green, cobalt, like deep purple, like colors I love, like red.
My wife just
like,
did the same thing, and she did that
she
whole
did?
color matching thing. And
Yes!
her colors are very earthly, earth tones, but they're very bright and they're very bold. And, you know, now that I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, 100% how much it works. And you're right. This scene, not now that you say it, it's just like, it looks fine, but it looks like every other like super high res digital camera. And I just like, I can't get over like then going back to your art, like how cool would it be had they that would have been like a fourth dimension to the movie that maybe a lot of people couldn't put words on or put their finger on, but it just makes the movie that much more immersive in magic and I don't want to say feeling separate from you, but feeling like this unique place with art and color and everything.
Yeah, I agree. And for me personally, like I'm happy to spearhead the movement. I'm happy to get people back into color, because like I think that color is inherently, I don't want to say like political, but it's like inherently like revolutionary. Like if you express yourself through vibrancy, you express yourself through individuality and like just your uniqueness, like you don't comply to others. And it's like kind of a weird thing, but like my family is only in America because of the Soviet Union. And like a big thing that like I was told from a young age, inadvertently, like my parents weren't sitting me down telling me, you know, like this is what happened. But like one of the things that was really encouraged in my life from a young age was being expressive and being bold and being myself, because there was a time in my family line where that was not allowed. You were not allowed to express joy because someone next to you might not be able to express that joy. And like, how dare you, you know, like be happy when someone else is upset. And it's just like learning that like later in life, like why my family is the way that it is was so interesting, because I'm like, this literally is the reason I am the way I am, you know, like just bold, excited who I am. And it's like, I refuse. I mean, obviously, like, I'm not going to be like rude, you know, like I have enough like social awareness of like when to, you know,
I'm
do
on
that
the
and not.
sphere.
But, like,
I'm on the sphere.
I mean, and I'm going to do that, you know,
You
because to
should.
me,
You should.
that is so exciting. And like, it's a huge accomplishment. And I think that we are so good at like playing down our accomplishments just because like, I don't know, like people don't want to like make people feel bad, or they don't want to, you know, like come off as like they're bragging. But to me, it's like, this is a huge digital screen. It's the biggest screen in the world. It's like trafficked by hundreds of thousands of people every single day. Like I have a guy that I follow on Instagram. He like works at the gym that I go to, and he's in Vegas this weekend. Mm-hmm. He posted from the outside of his Uber, the sphere, my art was on it. He didn't realize it was my art. And I was like, oh my God, that's my work. And he was like, wait, really? Like, I just loved it, you know? And it's just like, there's moments like that are happening for people. And like, it does have my name on it. You can't see it in every direction. It's like kind of rotating at like a weird angle, but like, it has my name on it. It has the things on it that like represent like me and my art. And I'm not going to play that down. Like, this is a huge moment, especially for digital art. I think people on Twitter cared more than other platforms for sure. TikTok didn't give a fuck, which was so funny. But like Instagram, people were like, this is exciting. But Twitter, people were like, digital art, because I feel like this is the focus for people here. Yeah. And like, I'm being loud about it, not because of me necessarily. It's less about like, I am on the sphere. It's more like digital art is on the sphere. Digital art, you know, is on the sphere. Like that was kind of the reason why I was so loud, is because I wanted people to see that like, this is bigger than me. This is like, we are on the sphere. Like, this space is on the sphere. And I'm glad that people, especially in the Ordinals community, were so excited about that, because it's like, to me, like it is so representative of like, this is like the world kind of evolving, you know, and like people, you know, in this space are doing things maybe outside of the space that are like really like notable. We should be paying attention to, you know?
Oh, 100%. I think your art on the sphere, it's just like a perfect fit. So tell me about, and I'm going to play this little clip because I absolutely love it. And I'm so glad that Twitter was kind of the home base, because, you know, is crazy as X is, I guess I should just call it X now, is crazy as the space is, and is sometimes as gross and as influencer pump as the timeline can get. There really is a core group of artists, thinkers, coders, and pure degens and traders who have come together. And there's competition there, but also to support each other. And I noticed on the timeline, you're very supportive of other artists. You're very positive, and that's not always an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. It's honestly not. And I think that what I have really realized is that other people's success is not my failure. We were talking about this a little bit before we went live, but I'll say it again. It's just like, one of the things I realized this year is like, everyone is at everyone's coming and going at different paths in different ways. And like you might cross someone and at a certain time you might feel like you two are doing the same thing.
Mhm.
But like chances are you have completely different goals and you're not going in the same direction. And like no one is your competition, because the only person that wants to achieve what you want to achieve in the way you want to achieve it is you. So it's just like the only competition you should have is with your former self.
Right.
Like just make sure you're getting better, you know? And I think like I look at an artist, you know, like a really like I'm just gonna like I'm trying to think of like a really like Rafiq Anadol, absolutely fantastic artist, incredible. Like stuff is in the MoMA. He was the first artist on Sphere. Like he is doing amazing things with like his own algorithms. I find it fascinating. Like I look at him and it's just like, yes, I could sit there and be like, I'm a horrible artist because Rafiq exists. Rafiq is 15 years older than me. He has been working on algorithms for years. He has like a team of like 10 people who help him. You know what I mean? And like he has completely different goals for what he wants to do with his work than I do. But like I still look at him as an inspiration, but like I don't feel bad about myself looking at someone like him, you know, or even if someone, I think in this space, it's so easy for people to see like sales numbers and they're like, well, why did that person make X when I haven't made any money? And it's just like, well, maybe like you should be like, if that is your feeling, that is something in you that needs to change. Like I always say, like jealousy is a sign that you need to do more. Like jealousy is your body's way of telling you like you are meant to achieve more than you are right now, and the way you're feeling has nothing to do with that other person, so don't take it out on them. It has everything to do with you.
Well, and it's very limiting. I feel like the older I get, the more I let go and just like don't. As I grew up in a town that was a lot was expected of me and disco and all my friends in this town, and you know, it was a more wealthier place. And, you know, I grew up with a lot of great people, and I grew up with a lot of like people who burned out because there was kind of so much pressure. But the more you compare yourself to others, and this happens a lot in corporate America, but the more you compare yourself to others, the more you're living someone else's dream and you're not living your own dream. And the more you just kind of like give up and let go and be like, you know what, I'm going to do my best today and I'm going to follow my own heart and passions, the more you're banging on this door, you're trying to knock this door down, you're trying to knock it down and engineer this whole thing where you meet this person and knock this door down. And then all of a sudden you just give up and you're gasping for air because you're exhausted trying to knock that door down. And you look over here and there's this massive open door that leads to a place way better than you could possibly even imagine with the first door you were trying to like cleverly knock down.
I completely agree with that. And I feel like there's a lot of people who, like I posted about this the other day, where it's just like, I think that authenticity is more important than people doing what they see other people doing. Because there are artists who I know who are super introverted, and I know that they're super introverted because they're my friends. And like the art needs to speak for them. They are not the kind of people that are going to like benefit from talking about their art, because they don't have, that's their gift is in the creation, right? And like it does speak for itself. You don't need to read anything. You just look at it and you're like, wow, this is fantastic. Where some artists, like they really benefit from talking about it. They really benefit from having some sort of narrative behind the artwork. And I think that like there's nothing wrong with either, right? Like there's nothing wrong with creating content around your work, or, you know, like only posting the art. Like you have to do whatever works for you. Like I look at an artist like Die with the Most Likes, like if he just posted the art, no caption, no like funny, you know, like replies or DM screenshots. Like if he just posted the art, it probably wouldn't have the same effect on everyone else, because that's not his authentic self. Like his authentic self is all of it. Like he posts like the funny selfies and the DMs and like the captions, like it makes it so uniquely him. And like, I love that about the way that he does it. And like, I think that like that to me is the point that I was trying to make, is just like every artist is going to have a different approach for like how they express themselves. And I think that like being authentically you is the only thing that matters. Cause like you said, you know, it's like, I realized that. I feel like I realize that in a different format, like every year, like there's a new layer to that onion of like, dang, I am just trying to knock down a door, whether it's through like friendship or like opportunities or whatever. And one of those things for me has been like through licensing. Like I really, like about like a year ago, I was of the opinion that artists, once they get to like, I don't want to say my level, but once they get to the point that I've gotten to, right, where like I've worked with the commercial artists, I have the following, I, can sell the products. I was like, there's two ways an artist like me can go. I firmly believe this. I was like, you either have to become a lifestyle brand and sell like clothing and like merch, or you have to go like fully fine art. And I was like, I don't want to do either of those things. And like, this whole year, I feel like for me, I was just kind of like, what do I want to do? What works for me? Because I had specifically two artists in mind that I was like, you have to go this person's route or this person's route. And I think what happened is I realized like, I actually don't have to go either of these routes.
No.
I can go my route. And like the big thing that I realized of me trying to knock down that door was like, oh, like there's this open portal over here. And for me, it's like licensing, and like my work does really well on a shelf, sells more units than, open editions. And like, that is an avenue that really works for me. And I should not shy away from that. So I've like done a lot to like expand that this year. And I'm really excited to see like, to show everyone what comes out of it.
Right.
But like, I think for me, like, I don't know, like, I feel like there's, you have to figure that out for yourself. And I think you have to like set goals and, constantly be thinking about them and know who you are to be able to achieve the things you want to achieve.
Yeah, no, that's really well put. And I love, and I want to echo what you just said. Like, should I be more like this person or this person? And you realize like that those artists followed the most successful ones, and maybe not always, but I think this is usually true. The most successful ones they finally realized they needed to get off the trodden road, and they got on their own path, and they followed more of their heart, their intuition, their gut, whatever you want to call it. And then they thrive from there because they're not competing with anyone anymore, and that's the key. Like, you don't need to compete with people to do your best work. In fact, once you put that aside, in our pre-show, you and I were talking about corporate America and how, our family and loved ones worked for it. I used to be in corporate America, and so much of your energy is spent in politics and positioning and how you say something and how you behave in a certain way and making your boss look good. It's just, it's 90%. It's such a waste, in my opinion, of energy. And then once you free yourself from that, you can just create. And it's scary. Sometimes you wake up, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do today. But then you embrace the I don't know. And that's even more beautiful.
I agree with that completely. And I think it stems from knowing you and knowing the role you play and like leaning into that. And I think that like a lot of people, that's what a lot of like coming of age movies are, which is so funny. But like, it's true. It's just like, know like what you're capable of and don't limit yourself to think that you can't achieve those things. That's been like a big thing for me, like this year too, is just like recognizing that like, I am not like limited by the things that I feel like I can't do. Like I don't say never anymore, ever, about anything, because I don't know.
Yeah, I like that philosophy. And you don't know. And if you whether you believe in a higher power or not, if you give up, I just know it works better. So I went through your timeline. It's so awesome, like, to interview people. You just like, it's so awesome because I can get kind of where someone is right now, get into their thinking. And you've gone through a lot of change and metamorphosis lately. Obviously, we just looked at the sphere. If I didn't say it before, I'll say it again. Congratulations. What a huge achievement for you and for, like you said, this entire space. And it's funny. It sounds like you did a lot of internal opening up and shifting. And then it was almost like, and ta-da, like, and you've obviously been working your butt off. Hard work you can't just sit in bed and give up to the universe. And I'm sure stuff's not going to happen. You got to work hard, but what's been, you had a great post like a couple weeks ago, and you're like, I posted about getting over my vulnerability. So let's just put that practice in action. And, you know, you go on and on about it, and you're very vulnerable in a timeline that's very, it's a very, the timeline can be very caustic and toxic and competitive and stuff like that. Yet you just poured out those vulnerabilities, and, you know, interestingly, and maybe ironic, maybe not, the algorithms like that. So take us through like your recent achievements, but also more from internally what was going on, and how you appeared to make a huge kind of breakthrough in your own person as a human, you know, going through life.
Can you remind me what that says? Because I don't remember.
Yeah, this is just a general, but it says I had a moment a few weeks ago on the Sphere where I did a little self-assess my life and realized everything is actually okay. So it was you being super admitting that you've been super hypercritical of yourself, hard on yourself because you're a woman, all these things that so many people and women and men in different ways wrestle with, but you just put it out there. Like, was that super cathartic? Was this a turning point, or has this turning point been happening over years of just artistic exploration?
So with that post in particular, what happened was, I think it was like a Sunday morning, and I was in bed with my fiance and my cat. And like, we were just sitting there, and like, it was just so nice. And I had this like moment where I realized like everything in my life like is okay. Like, I have friends who like me, who do not, you know, have a group chat behind my back.
Right.
I have friends. I'm like not a group chat, like friend group kind of friend. Like I have like one group chat that I actually participate in, like text group chat. And it's me and two girls that I'm friends with. They're in the space. I adore them. And we all live in LA. We hang out, and like, it's just, we talk, but there's like no weirdness if we text each other on the side. There's no like, oh, why are you, no, it's very adult.
And
Triangles
could be dangerous.
But I honestly am like, this is so relaxing for me to know that like this is possible, to like have a friend like group that is just no drama. So it's just like, to me, like I have the friends, I have people who love me. I had like a moment during Marfa, which I didn't go to, but it was during Marfa. It was like the end of November. And I had like this brief like out of body experience where I saw myself as other people see me. And I was just like happy, and people were happy to see me. And I was just like a fucking good vibe. And I was just like, wow, is this how people see me? Like, that's incredible. Awesome. And like, I'm so grateful that that's how people see me. And it was just like this moment where I was like, oh, okay. Like, if people see me in the way that I see myself, and regardless of how people see me, like, that's how I see me. Like, I'm happy, and like, I love being around other people, and I love, you know, like generally the things in my life. And I feel like I've done a good job of like curating the things and the people I want around. I also realized that like a lot of the problems I used to have, like sometimes I struggle with like people like making fun of me and not realizing it. And it was like a month before, I was in New York for something, and I was talking to this person, and they like kind of did that, right? They kind of like, I was like, oh, I love it when like dads are so supportive in like their daughters' lives. Like, I find it so inspiring. And this woman was like, well, yeah, they don't really have a choice. And I was just kind of like, okay, if you're going to play this little game with me, I'm just going to keep you at an arm's distance. I don't have to pretend to like you. I don't have to pretend that you're right and I'm wrong. I'm just going to like emotionally put up a boundary.
Yeah.
And like, in my life, I haven't been able to do that. I would have taken that as like, wow, this person hates me. What did I do wrong? And like internalize it. And it was just like so quickly, I was just like, you know what? this is like so not my problem. I like saw them later in the day. We were at like a dinner. I said hi, and it's just like didn't have to be weird. We didn't sit anywhere near each other at dinner. And it was just like, it doesn't have to be strange. I don't hate this person. Maybe it was like lost in translation, right? And I've had these realizations over the past like year and a half, I'd say, where I've just realized like my life is actually like really good. Like, yeah, I could always make more money. Like, I think that's like the one thing that I truly like wish was, different. But I know that even if because I have every time I've been like, if I just had X amount, I would be happy. And now I have X amount. And I'm like, well, if I just had Y amount, then I'd be, you know what I mean? So it's like, It just keeps building. So I know that that's never going to be fulfilling. But like the things that truly are fulfilling, like relationships and like my self-awareness, my self-perception, like my practice with myself, the way that I like keep routine, like I feel really good about my life, and the things that matter are there. And I think in that tweet, what I was really trying to say is just like, the minute you start comparing yourself to other people and the minute that like you start thinking, well, they went viral and I didn't, it's just like, then you're losing the plot, because like maybe that's not the point for you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say, kind of weird, but like really helped with this, is like really learning astrology. Because to me, like, I've always known astronomy. I mean, that's like, my dad works at fucking NASA. Like, there's no way for me to not. Like, I like know more about like planets and like, random stuff, just because he like will call me and talk about it. He just finds it interesting. But like, learning astrology has really changed the way that I feel, because it's showing me that I'm going through everything for a reason. It's like giving me some sort of like tangible proof that like the things that I'm experiencing for some reason or another like have to happen.
Interesting.
And it's,
so would you
yeah,
say
it's
astrology
weird.
and astronomy they're like peanut butter and jelly, like they just go together perfectly?
I'd say they are different, because astrology deals with you and specific locations and transits, where astronomy is just the like planets and what they do. So I would actually say that astronomy is a peanut and astrology is your favorite sandwich that involves peanut butter, whether it's a fluffernutter, PB&J, peanut butter and banana, like whatever it is, because it's so individual for you compared to astronomy, which is so like Saturn is a gas planet. You know what I mean? It's like they're just different.
Do you think we have free will, or do you think astrology and do you think in many ways our fate is set?
I think that we have options. Those like choose your own adventure books?
Are you kidding me?
I think we have
I have the
those.
Cave of Time behind this green screen right here. I have the Cave of Time. Do you know the Cave of Time? It's the first one.
I feel like I do.
It was from like Scholastic books back in the 70s or early 80s. The Cave of Time, Third Planet from Altair, I think was like the third one. The first couple were super goofy, but those books were awesome. I used to caddy in high school and college, and you would get paid in cash. And that book had such meaning to me that I would put that was my little bank. I'd make the bills all crisp and I would just put them in there between the pages. So yes, I definitely know Choose Your Adventure. I think they're awesome.
Yeah. And I think that people have, that you have the choice to make choices. I do think that, but I do think that like to a degree, there are certain choices that people can make in their lifetime. And there are certain windows of opportunity where people can do more or less. Like the astrology for me over the past like 18 months, right, has been a lot about like reflection and like growth and realizing things essentially. And it's exciting, but it kind of aligns with what was going on anyway. And I think that like astrology kind of lives like at this very like high level of your life. Because I kind of called hogwash until I looked at the astrology for my life in years past. And I was like, okay, in 2016, based on my astrology, like what happened? And all that stuff happened. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like this is insane. Like that actually happened. It's just like, I think that certain things happen in like it's very broad strokes. That's the other thing. It's not like astrology is going to be like on April 29th you are going to drink a cup of coffee and spill it and get a 3rd-degree burn. Like that's not going to happen.
Right,
But like you might have an opportunity during like a Mercury retrograde where like you have a fight with someone and like you don't know when it's going to happen, but sometime in that period where communication is kind of fuzzy and weird, like you're going to say something that someone misunderstands and it's going to cause a conflict. That is likely to happen. And it's just like it's really weird. I mean, like, not to get like political, but Trump's assassination attempt, the first one, happened like it was like the day that something happened on his like north node that like reflected like a huge like moment in his life. And you don't know what the moment could have been.
Of course.
But it's just like knowing that like there was something in his chart on that day that like reflected this is really weird. And I think like just another example, I mean, for the election, people were asking astrologers, like, what do you think is going to happen? And the answer was not like A is going to win, B is going to win. It was very much like either one of them can have an opportunity to do something. And it's like, it's very broad strokes, right? And I think that like you kind of take it the way that you need to take it. But it doesn't mean that like right becomes left. It means like however you need to interpret like your communication skills will be broadened is helpful for you, like, and that might be different for you and I. But I don't think that like you're fated necessarily of like, oh, you're a Taurus, like you're going to, do X, Y, or Z in your life. Like it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So it sounds like
way,
you would almost say that things happen. There's a lot of things in this world, maybe fate that are out of our control, but you're saying you always have a choice in how you respond to the situation. Is that fair? And how you internally process it?
I would say so. And I think that a lot of people don't realize how much trauma comes into the decisions that they make. You know what I mean? So it's just like, you might think you don't have a choice when you actually do, just because like you don't feel empowered to have a choice. And I think that's very valid and very fair. Like, I think that like, there's a lot of people who like, they have essentially like, cement on their feet and like, they don't know how to get out of it because it's hard. And it's, everyone they've ever known has had cement blocks on their feet. So it's kind of hard to like get out of certain thought patterns. But yes, I would say, yeah, 100%. I mean, like, I remember when I realized that my dad had adopted his mom's financial like stress because his mom grew up in the Great Depression. And I was like, oh my God, I have inherited my dad's stress from the Great Depression. Yep. And I'm like, whoa, I need to really work on this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it shaped my life,
Yeah. 100%. My parents were born in the 30s and they grew up in it as kids, obviously, but they adopted that and I adopted that until COVID, when I was like, what the fuck am I holding on to money for? Like, let's put a pool back there. Let's live. Let's have some fun and let's not worry as much about it. But that's a hard money. I don't know if it was before the show or at the beginning of the show, but money, is an energy. That's a hard one to shake, your relationship with money. Like, a lot of people they can't even handle having a lot of it. Like, they almost have to burn it. But there's probably so many metaphors for how people handle money. But I'll ask you, do you think life is real, or do you think it's more of a simulation?
I think this is real. I do believe in reincarnation though. And I believe that like parts and fragments of your soul and your ego like have existed in other realities. And like, this is kind of weird, but like, I'm glad we're kind of getting like really esoteric. Like, one of the things that I have always known about myself, but have like really kind of grown into, is that like I have I have like a second sight. Like I can feel things and I can sense things before they happen. And that doesn't mean like everything. It's not like I'm aware that like the microwave's going to go off. It's not like that. But it's just like there are moments where I just know things are going to happen, and I just know that like certain feelings are going to come up, and maybe that's just, you know, like being neurodivergent and having like pattern recognition abilities. Like I don't know. But like I have like dreams where I swear like they're a different reality. Like there's something happening in that dream that like is happening in another reality, and it feels very real. And like I firmly believe that like we can tap into another plane. But I think as humans we have to stay very grounded, because like something that I realized in my like spiritual practice, maybe like a few years into it, like was that it's really easy to like start thinking that you're like above other humans, and it's like you can't be thinking that way. Like you are still human, you still like can get punched in the face just like everyone else, feel bruised just like everyone else. Like
Right.
there is like absolutely nothing that makes you any less or more of a human than anyone else. But I do think that like being able to use like a gift of, you know, like second sight or intuition or whatever you want to call it can be really helpful. And it's funny because I've always kind of had that thought of like, I know things other people don't know. I can sense things are happening. I can like feel certain, especially certain people in my life. Like there are certain people who like, I don't even talk to them anymore, but I know when big events happen in their life. And then lo and behold, it happens. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, why do I know what's going on in your life? Even though you're not telling me, I'm not talking to you, you know? And I think that it really clicked when I looked at, again, my astrology when it came to these things, because I was like, this is weird. How and why is this connected? And apparently, I think it's my the position and constellation that my Jupiter is in is very like expressive of this kind of thing. And it is also super tied to creativity. And it's just like one of the things that I learned in that was that my creativity is super linked to this site. And I think that people often tell me, your art looks like my dreams. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I really don't. I think that that is like, I am intentionally kind of like bringing this like world into reality that we can see in a way that like shows people something else, you know? But yeah, I mean, there are like weird little moments that I have where like I don't know, like I'll like have full conversations with people in dreams, you know, that like I know like aren't happening in real life because they're, you know, deceased or whatever, but like they're people I
Right.
know. But
Your
it's super weird. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, your art is it is very dreamy, and you know, I dream a ton, but of course if we don't write them down right when we wake up, it's very hard to remember them. But as far as just being super vivid, yeah, I mean it's super cool. Like you're tapping into something you know, within this universe, but also kind of in this multiverse and in our dreams, and you know, where we go when we dream. I mean, it's super cool. But now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course these tap into dreams. And it sounds like with your art, you give it and your craft and what you do and what you put on canvas a lot of thought.
I do. And a lot of it kind of comes to me. Like I have moments where I'll be making something and I'm like, no, 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 it has to be like this. Or even like last night, I was like getting ready for bed. I literally was in my bathroom getting ready for bed. And then I had a thought, and I had to come right back in here and I had to like write it down, you know? And it's just like, it wouldn't have clicked that way until it did, you know? And I'm grateful for that. But like, I have moments where I have to kind of like trust the site that like there's something else there. Um, which is part of the reason why I think my work doesn't really like follow like a theme. Like I think that like it has a style for sure, but like I see other artists work and it's so like descriptive, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I love that. And that's how that manifests for them, you know? But like for me, like I'm not going to show you like you holding your cat, you know, like necessarily. I'm going to show you the way that that feels. Like if your emotional like landscape was real, this is what it would feel like. And that's always kind of been my thing. I mean, that's The Astronomer's Daughter. Like that was kind of the idea, was like you were supposed to be interpreting the window, because all of them are in a window. And the idea is like on the specific day, this is what like the window looked like. And I'm really like passionate about the fact that like my work kind of has that element to it. And I think that like being able to bring in like these narratives of my life, right? Like these immutable things that no one can change, like my relationship with my dad, it makes it very real for me. Like all the collections that I've put on chain, especially, are things that can't be taken away. Like they're situations and stories that like they exist within me. Like the next thing that I'm working on is the same thing. It's like these are memories. These are things that like are not open to interpretation, in terms of like how it happened. Like how I show you is different, but like how it happened, like the plot is solid. So I feel, oddly enough, this is really weird, but like I feel like Kendrick Lamar, his music does the same thing, where like his work has always just built on the narrative of his life,
Right.
and it's just kind of like continued to build over time. But he's telling the same story just from different perspectives and different places in his life. And I find that so inspiring as an artist, because I feel like that's kind of where I'm going. It's just like I want to keep evolving the story so you can keep seeing like the raw self-expression.
Yeah, I think that's what good artists do, whether it's art or music or shoot, even podcasts. Like you have to be able to explain your evolution, the human experience from different stories. If you tell the same story over and over, it gets a little stale, not only for you as a creator, but obviously also for an audience. And we never want to cater to an audience, but you've got to keep it fresh and keep kind of exploring yourselves. I'm glad you brought up Kendrick Lamar. My son loves Kendrick Lamar, and obviously, when it's him or Drake, obviously we all know what the right answer is there, but thank goodness, Kendrick is awesome.
That's actually such a good example, I think, of like artistry, because I think like Drake is an artist who is so obsessed with charts. He's so obsessed with like viral moments. All of his lyrics are so tied to like an Instagram caption. Like he wants you to be able to put his lyrics as an Instagram caption in your post. And like Kendrick is out here just like telling the story of his life, his dad, his relationship with his kids, his wife. It's just like he is out here like explaining who he is. Like in his album in 2017, the last song on it is this story about how his dad used to work at a Popeyes on the weekend in South Central LA. And he was, Top Dog would come in when he was like selling drugs and would get food. And his dad realized very quickly that this was a gangster not to be messed with, like be nice to him. And then one day when Top Dog decided to like rob the store, his dad was saved because he was so friendly with Top Dog. And it's just like the story of how then Top Dog was the artist who gave, when he got into rapping, was the artist who gave Kendrick his first record deal, money, advance, all of that, to be who he was. And he got to tell them that story together. I'm like, this is so powerful. Like this is a story Drake can't tell, and I think that like, for me, like every time I listen to that song, it like makes me emotional, because it's just like, I know what it feels like to have one domino fall and like a whole bunch of things happen. And I love that like level of rawness, and I think that he explains it so well. And it's so like electrifying. And it's just like, there are a few Drake songs, I guess, like what have you done, like from 2011, maybe, about his grandma and how he spent a lot of time with her, and he felt like really sad died. Like, yeah, but like he really, I think, after like Take Care, that album, like I think Drake really tried to go like the viral route. And I look at that from an artistic, like a visual artistic perspective, and it's just like there are a lot of artists out there who like, that I know, that are just so concerned with going viral. That's the only thing they fucking care about. They don't care about like evolving artistically. They don't care about, like learning new skills. The only thing they care about is like, I want to go viral. I want 1 million followers, like da 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 da. And it's just like, I looked at this beef with Kendrick and Drake. It did something for me. That beef did something for me.
I think it did something for a lot of people. Yeah.
And it was like, I don't want to be the viral artist. I am not interested in being the Drake. I am not interested in like stealing a bunch of different artists, like aesthetics to come off as relevant. Like I see so many artists, not on Twitter, but like in the other world, who that's what they do. They try on other artistic styles to stay relevant. And it's just like, I have no interest in that. And like, I want to tell stories of substance. So that's been like a huge push for me.
Yeah.
I think that it did something for me. I don't know. It just was like, artists should be more like Kendrick, like know your why and talk about it.
Yeah. And that's beautifully put. And no matter what you do, if you're making toast, like I said, and there's so many artists in our space and, you know, but I want to bring it back to our community and X and AOB and we don't have to go into specific people and details, but just talk about it overall. Like this space is so beautiful if you've got a good curated timeline and you've got certain pumpers and influencer networks muted. But like what I wrestle with, this is very hard for me. What I wrestle with is I want to focus on just going deep, having great conversations with artists like you, and just really, like you said, we were going to have a conversation anyway. We might as well record it and let other people watch it. And if they want to watch it, great. If they don't, I don't give a shit. You know, that's up for the universe to decide. But what role does X and the algorithms, and we were talking about introverted artists who maybe can't express themselves and have that mimetic ability. Like you have a very good ability to express yourself and to show, and your art does that too. I'm almost asking you a question that's too big to answer. So I guess I'll just start somewhere. Like, what is this moment we're in with, whether it's ETH NFTs or Ordinals, but specifically, you know, we can talk about Instagram and TikTok a little, but you know, X is where we're most rooted. Like, what is that, and what does it mean to you?
So, I have like a ladder that I kind of put people in terms of like the people who I are like in my ecosystem, right? It could also be a spiral or a, you know, bullseye or whatever, but like, I don't know, a ladder works for me. And basically the whole idea is like the outer circle is the people, or the last rung. Those are the people who are spectators, right? They're the people who just like the art, whatever. People on Twitter are so much less likely to follow you as a spectator. They might engage with your work if they see it, but they're not out here like talking to you, you know? And then you've got like the followers, the people that actually like will comment on your stuff, might quote tweet it, like they engage a little bit more like meaningfully. And then I feel like you have the collectors, and those are the people, whether it's on Twitter or anywhere else, they've purchased the artwork, right? They're invested in some way, shape, or form in the career. And then I feel like you have like the inner circle. And those are the people who like you talk to, you spend time with them, you like engage, they're like invested in you, you know, they're more of, I would even consider those people maybe like patrons at that point. But like, I think that on Twitter, because the spectators don't become followers, like you have kind of eliminated that like outer circle. Like it's pretty much just people who are like engaged, invested, collecting, and that's it. And I think that creates like a very like interesting dynamic and ecosystem of people who really just like each other, you know? Because like you said, I mean, like once you curate that timeline of people that you want to see, you do see a lot of like things that you are invested in. And I think that Twitter kind of has that ability behind it, where I feel like, I mean, TikTok is like mostly spectators, right? Like you're constantly being pushed to a feed those people who don't follow you. Right. They're all spectators. Like my goal on TikTok every time I post is just get people to sign up for my emails. That's all I'm trying to do. I just want you to sign up for my emails, so maybe you follow me somewhere else. And then like Instagram, I feel like is so like you can have the same like I have like what I would consider like patrons on Instagram. And like, but it's different. It's a different level of like spectatorship, right? And I think that like Twitter has this ability, because it's so participatory, that like you eliminate the spectator altogether. Like it's pretty much just people who are engaged, especially before things get out of your orbit. Like once they're out of your orbit, if it goes viral, like it's different. But it's like if it is in your orbit and it's like your followers are seeing it, the people who follow you, or people who like maybe you follows followers, like because that's who gets shown your stuff, like it stays within that orbit. Like it's going to be very participatory. It's going to be very like community based. And I think that is what makes Twitter so interesting. I would say honorable mention, Threads is like that too. I spend a lot of time on Threads. That's like Instagram's version of Twitter. But I like that because Threads is like where Twitter, I feel like, is more like the tech people that I like.
Right.
Threads is more like the artists that I follow. Like we're talking about like strategy and like other stuff like that, which like I need both of those sides, you know, and they
Like
serve different purposes.
strategy for launching art and stuff like that.
How to get more email followers, like, you know, how to set goals for yourself.
Strategy, yeah.
Yeah, just, you know, like the marketing, the like artist development, things like that I'm not going to talk about as much on Twitter, at least like on the timeline. Just because like it's a different crowd. Like I feel like Threads is more like just artists, where I feel like Twitter is like artists and like collectors and builders. So it's like, I don't know, it's like if you have a conversation with like your cousin versus like your mom, it's going to be different, you know?
Right. No, you're right. And different algorithms favor different things, and the platforms themselves favor different ways and make it easier and harder to communicate too. That's interesting. There's a great article that Snoop Toshi turned me on to. I think it's called like Mops, Geeks, and Sociopaths.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, good.
Yes.
I'm glad
the
light bulb.
counterculture argument.
Okay, so
Yes,
so you
I've
know
read it.
all about that. I just read that recently. Wow, was that an eye opener for me? Like, because your spectators are basically the mops, right? The mops are the ones who come in later. That's once the anime and you know the great animes come out, and now the big corporations are making anime. The mops are basically the ones. They're I was a big skater growing up. The mops are the posers, right? They're the hangers-oners or the wannabes, but they're not core anything. And core is probably such an X word, but that helped me understand so much about how this culture works. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I actually have a question for you.
Yeah,
Having been in
please.
Bitcoin since 2015, do you feel like, I hate to say this or how do you feel like art on Bitcoin or just like ETH NFTs, like the art side of blockchain, how do you think that fits into like the larger like crypto kind of ecosystem?
Well, it's definitely
Is it just different?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a niche within a niche. Here's what I always shared with Disco when we did the show. He was like class of 2021. When Bitcoin would go up and down in the early days, I didn't have a ton of people to share those wins and losses with. Like in real life, I have a company, and there's just two owners, me and one other guy. We have employees, but there's two of us who own it, and we go through the roller coaster together. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, cause even the lows, not that you celebrate the lows, but you also like, it's a salve to have the other person because you're in the same front car of this roller coaster together. So my point is from 2015 to whatever, 2021, 2022, before I got in NFTs, I didn't have a ton of people to talk about it with. I was deep diving on Andreas Antonopoulos and Trace Mayer, probably a lot of other people I haven't heard of. If you haven't seen a Trace Mayer video on the 7 network effects of Bitcoin, that was my light bulb aha moment. But so I didn't have anyone to celebrate the highs and lows with. And then come NFTs, I actually got into them back asswards. And I just like somebody wrote something really funny on the X timeline, these nuclear nerds. And then I got one and I scrolled the timeline. I don't know why I fell in love with them. I was like, oh man. And I just kept scrolling. And I'm like, I never parted my Bitcoin and ETH. I didn't realize I was a maxi, but I would just hold and stack, which, you know, if you want to be rich, that's what you do. You don't like, if you're trying to buy art to make even more money or time runes to make more money, unless you're in one of the influencer networks or you can catch a falling knife like really well without cutting yourself, like it's very difficult. But once I got into the NFT art ecosystem in ETH, and I had a CryptoPunk and bought Chain Left, like, I loved that ecosystem, but it allowed me to connect with people and make friends and be a part of groups. I don't think what people realize is the first need, you know, in Maslow's hierarchy is you need to belong. You need to feel like you belong somewhere. And NFTs are that belonging layer. Art is actually, you know, a couple steps up in the smaller part of the pyramid on the whole Maslow's hierarchy, because you have to be self-confident in who you are. Like even as a collector, like I was like, oh, I should collect this. Like, you know, I always ask Stephen Miller what to collect, but now like, and obviously I'm not going to get anything that doesn't resonate with me, and he's good at pointing stuff out, but now I collect things like that I want to collect, and I connect with the people that I want to connect with. So I would say it has become an internal social glue that brings so many of us together. I honestly think this is the zeitgeist of some of the coolest things happening in the world right now. It's just most of the normies don't really understand it. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad if I didn't have this passion for collecting art within Bitcoin and ETH, I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have had a great conversation with Casey or any of my friends in Miami on that roof deck on 8th Street. Like just chill vibes, being yourself, talking about your dreams, talking about art, talking about coding. I'm a multifaceted person. I'm not just like, I'm an art collector, I'm a coder. I'm all of those things. And the shuffling that deck together, it was almost like this industry was made for my intellect. And I assume I speak for a lot of people out there, where I like multidisciplinary things coming together to create something much bigger.
That is very validating to hear. And I feel very similarly. And I think, have you read the book by Chris Dixon, Read, Write, Own?
I don't think
Did you hear about that one?
No.
It's honestly, if you know this ecosystem, it'll feel very elementary, but there is one, he explains it very well. So, I mean, it's a good review. But like the one chapter in it that I really liked was he was talking about like the culture or the casino versus the computer. And I thought that that was a really good way to explain. It's basically the mops and the oh god, don't tell me, the mops and the nerds. Like it's kind of like, you know, the nerds are the ones who like, you know, blockchain. They enjoy the idea of like what's actually happening with the technology, and then like the casino obviously is, you know, the mops, the people who are kind of here to just like make their money. And I think that like you need both in a little bit, like you kind of do. I definitely fall further on the side of the computer. Like I find this space interesting because I like the technology that it offers me. I like the ability to have like an actual like transparent ledger of ownership and transaction. I find that interesting. It's funny because I feel like the rest of the world, they're this close to understanding. They're so close to getting it. Every day people hit me up and they're like, can I buy wallpapers from you? And I'm like, you are so close to understanding, but you don't get it yet. Because they don't see the reason. They see a need to purchase low cost digital assets. They get that. I mean, Fortnite skins, like Sims expansion packs, like they get that. They've known that for a long time. What they don't understand is why it should be traced on a transparent ledger for everyone else to see, because they don't see the need for they don't see the need for authenticity, or authentication, I should say. Like they don't see the purpose of that, because to them, there's honestly, and I hate that this is true, so much of the digital objects that people own or have, I should say, are rented. Like I think about Audible. I am a
100.
staunch Audible person. I love Audible. I was looking at the books that I've already purchased, and there was a book in my library that I purchased that is no longer available. Why the fuck is that? I bought it. I spent money, but it's not mine, you know? And I think like,
how crazy is that? Like that's
yeah.
censorship at its worst. And I would argue the geeks or the nerds are the ones who understand that freedom of speech is important, who understand not your keys, not your crypto is important. So do you think, let me ask you a question. Do you think with normies, ownership has literally, and the concept of it with Amazon Prime and Netflix, do you think the concept of ownership has been kicked out of them?
No, but I do think that it has been numbed. And I think that a few of them are starting to wake up to it, though. I believe that Gen Z specifically, they will fall in love with physical ownership. They kind of already are. Like I see Gen Z with iPods and like string headphones and CD players and flip phones. Like they like the old technology because it's tangible to them. And I think Gen Alpha is going to be even more like that because like their whole world has been digital. They've never known the beauty of soul physical ownership. They've never known that. So for them, like owning a book, having it in your hand is going to feel so important. I actually think that like with good enough AI in time, we're actually not going to need resources like Audible because you can just pick a voice and be like, read this to me. I own the book, read me the page, you know, and it's going to be able to do it for you. I think that like I see a few people like influencers, I'd say, not in the space, but like just, you know, regular influencers who their whole thing is like physical ownership. Like they want to own DVDs and VHS and everything else because it's real. And I think that there are conversations happening now on like TikTok and Substack and all these other places where I feel like people are starting to realize like, oh, I actually don't own any of this stuff. Like when I am on Spotify, like I have all these playlists that potentially could just disappear tomorrow because I don't own them. And they're starting to wake up to it, but I think that the majority does not see the purpose yet. I do think it will happen. It'll probably happen as a reaction, unfortunately, to something going under, maybe TikTok. In a few weeks, because I think that people are starting to, there's a lot of anger right now of people being like, well, small businesses are about to lose so much money and this and that. And it's just like, this is what happens when you don't own your audience. This is what happens.
Yeah.
You know, like
I heard that It's a Wonderful Life, which my wife and I love watching. It was actually altered by Amazon Prime. Now that's where we have our quote unquote copy right now. We just watched it before Christmas. I don't know what that change was, so I'll have to see. But that, to me, that censorship fight is super important. And I think that's where the geeks or nerds, whatever we call us, like that's where the inner core, you know, as a skater, we were the core group. We're the ones who love skating for the sake of skating, not loving skating for the sake of like having like a mohawk and just being around the skaters and the cool vibe. Like, there's a big difference, right? So do you think it is on people like us, we early adopters, obviously everyone in our groups, everyone who's listening to this, do we have a responsibility to teach our generation, the normies as they onboard who are looking for wallpaper, to teach them about not your keys, not your crypto, and about censorship and about, you know, government suppression and all that stuff? Or does that take care of itself when there's just government overreach?
As a recovering people pleaser, I personally am not, I personally like feel like someone saying to me, like, can I buy a wallpaper is not the time for me to be like, do you know about government censorship and your keys? Like, I don't feel that.
And it wouldn't work. They wouldn't hear. They're not ready to hear you. Right.
Exactly. If someone were to ask me, and they were to be like, hey, how do I get more involved? I would tell them everything, but like, I firmly believe, I'm also a recovering like codependent. And I would say like, I firmly believe that like, until a question is asked, it's not on me to assume the needs of others. I'm not, the world's executive assistant. I don't need to like constantly be like figuring out what the world needs from me. I will wait until the world asks me what it needs, especially in situations like that. I don't believe in evangelizing. But like, I do think that you lead better by example than you do by like, shouting things from the rooftops. So for me, it's like, people know that I'm involved in this space. I think that they have their feelings about it because people unfortunately are starting to associate crypto and Twitter with like political affiliation, which like to me isn't really the same thing. Like, I don't think that it's the same. But I also see that like other people don't have that nuance.
Can I give you a nice piece of news before you continue on with your story? There's great research from a guy named Troy Cross. I think he goes by the Tro Crow.
Okay.
They did a whole study on who holds crypto, and it's just as many liberals and just as many independents as on the right side. I think on Twitter that doesn't feel that way at all, but the actual data shows it is not a political thing at all. And I will say, and I've said this on the show, as I've been a lifelong Democrat, but I'm no longer, I'm fully independent now after what the censorship and everything that they did with this last election. And the more we're learning, the more disgusted I get. But I'm an independent thinker. That's why I'm in this space. But it also relieves me to know that crypto is a universal need that we all have, and it is not party affiliated.
That right there was my college thesis. Actually, was independent thinkers and the way that they vote. Yeah, I have a degree in I used to work in politics. So independent, I mean, I was originally my first registered to vote, I was registered as a libertarian. And then I realized that I grew up in Maryland, and I realized in Maryland there's closed primaries and you can't vote as a independent, or as like a third party,
Illinois
basically.
Too. Same thing.
Yeah, it was annoying. So I was like, shoot, I have to register as one or the other. And like, I mostly aligned with, Democrat. So that's what I did to be able to vote in the primary. But thankfully in the Maryland primary, it's closed, but it's not like a straight ticket. So I could still vote for how I wanted to. And like, I've voted for Republicans in the past. I actually think moderate Republicans have like, I vote for pragmatic politics. That's how I feel. I want things to happen. I don't care how they happen, as long as they don't hurt people. I just want things to happen. And like, it drives me crazy. Like when I worked on the Hill, it was like shortly after earmarks were gotten rid of. So it's like, you couldn't really like scratch people's back for them to scratch yours. And like, nothing happened. Like, we just didn't do anything. And it was just kind of like, this is ridiculous. It's kind of funny because I think that like a lot of people in general benefit from this ecosystem. And I'm glad to know the research has been done that like it kind of is all over the spectrum, because one of the things that I tell women specifically is getting into crypto, specifically Bitcoin, because it's like, if you want an asset that is just going to continue to go up and up and up, and you don't have to do anything with it, you don't have to trade it, you just hold it. You just hold it and put more money in it like you would a high yield savings account. Right. You can actually have a nest egg for yourself, because like, I think that like a lot of women specifically, and this isn't true for all women, but I think a lot of women are not taught the same like financial literacy, just because like it's just not a common conversation topic. It's not like, oh, we're not going to tell her, but it just doesn't come up, And
it's not part of the social fabric and familial norms to do so. No. I 100% agree.
And I'm so grateful I'm the only child, because my dad had to treat me like his son, like I had to fulfill that need for him too. So in a way, like I like feel so like tapped in ways that, and I don't agree with everything my dad does, like financially. Like he makes some decisions financially that like I find very risky, and I'm kind of risk adverse, and that's fine. But like I feel like I learned those things. And when I talk to women and they're like, how do you know this? And I tell them everything. And I feel so strongly that like financial literacy should be, everyone should know it. And like it's financial literacy and weightlifting are the two things that any woman who's like, help me, I will help them, because I believe strongly that everyone should know. And I think that like when it comes to financial literacy and having your own money, like you can put money in a high yield savings account. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, if you want like a greater investment over time, and you want your money to not be tied up in a bank that potentially could, like seize your funds or freeze them or whatever.
Or there's
else,
a bank
like,
run. Yeah. Fractional reserve banking. No, thank you.
Yeah, you might want to put it somewhere where that's not a concern, Right. And I think that people get that and they understand that. And I think that like there's something really beautiful about a system that kind of has no limits and like no, like, I hate to say it, but like regulation. And I fear what that will look like in the time to come. I believe that this is the money of the internet, and you shouldn't be able to put a like ownership of sovereignty over the internet, because yes, you need an IP address in a specific place to access the internet. But like if Facebook and Meta or whatever has more power than like an actual country, in my opinion, like the internet is a sovereign place, and we can't regulate it from a non-internet perspective. I feel very strongly about the fact that a lot of politicians too do not understand these things, because there's this like there's this weird dynamic in the DC like landscape where people are just very like, they're very anti-TikTok, they're very anti-Tesla, they're very anti-crypto. And those are like the three things. And like influencer culture, like they hate all of those things. They're like,
yeah, because like, it destroys the mainstream media narrative. It's way easier to have fewer conduits for quote unquote truth. And now they were able to corral it. They were able to corral Meta, right? They were able to corral Instagram. They were able to corral everybody but X. And, X obviously has its own issues with the algorithms. Like, do you think we are slaves to the algorithm?
I think that the information we receive from the algorithm is very, like, intentional. Because, like, for example, I have never, ever on my timeline, not once, seen any of the violence that I see my friends talking about, specifically my male friends talking about. I have never once seen a violent video on my timeline.
I don't think I have either.
My Twitter account is also registered as female, and my male friends are registered as male. And I do believe, because what I see is pop culture moments I didn't ask for. What I see is pictures of kittens. I do think that is intentional.
Nothing to
exactly.
see here. No financial information here. You're a woman.
Nothing. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't love those like nasty, like 4chan type, violence videos. Like, I'm 100%. Not interested in that, but like neither are they, because that's how they hear about it, because they're complaining that they're seeing it. And I think that, another thing I researched pretty heavily is the way that algorithms are manipulated through a political lens. Because in 2016, that's how Trump won the election. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. He, through the data that they found, like through Cambridge Analytica, they literally were able to come up with talking points, find their voter base, use targeted ads, create bots to create false sentiment around like a voter base that doesn't actually exist, and manipulate the outcome of the election. I was working for the Democratic Party at that time. I woke up and I was like, we're going to elect Hillary Clinton. Maryland went like 87% blue. 80, like that's insane. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like I lived in a bubble that I didn't know anyone that was voting for Donald Trump in 2016.
Bubble. It's so true. And a few people saw it. I think that the guy who did the car documentary back in the 80s. What's his name, from Michigan? He called it. A couple people saw it coming, but I know you spoke of 4chan. A lot of people, that kind of gross culture came out in support of Trump too. But it was definitely gamed. And I think that's why now you've seen an over backlash from the Democratic Party in terms of the censorship. We know that Mark Zuckerberg was heavily censored. He just gave the letter to that congressperson. So we've seen this huge swing the other way. How do we as citizens, I don't know if it's Noster, I don't think it's Farcaster, how do we get control of our algorithms? Maybe it is Noster. Maybe you and I, maybe we grab the Ordinals community and be like, let's write an algorithm for us, and literally we can pick it. You know what I mean? And I know that's what more of the open platform stuff. I don't know if Blue Sky's gone there, but to me, that seems critical, because if like you said, Meta, Facebook is literally stronger. Let's just call them for what they are. Probably the 5th or 6th most powerful country in the world, right? Because that's how big that platform is. Or one could argue the social networks between the FANGs, Google, Microsoft, and but especially Google, Facebook, and maybe throw X in there, like those social media networks, like that is the town square. And if those algorithms are stacked against you, and they're stacked against open discourse, and they favor violent car crashes and kittens. Oh, here's a pretty kitten. Meow, meow, meow. If they try and like hit
Pop crave.
Yeah. You know, what's funny. My son is a big YouTube watcher, and he's a smart kid and he loves science. So he gets fed. Like, he's like, Dad, did you know that nuclear fission? And I'm like my wife and I just try and keep up with how smart he is. But you figure down the street, some of his best friends, remember, are getting fed top 10 catches by Willie Mays, and which is awesome. But you're getting fed. You're basically, your intellect and what you're really into is being almost exponentialized, and it's absolutely bonkers. Mm-hmm. How do we take that control back?
We need
regulation. Or do we just have to do it? But who do we just saw what regulation and over-regulation are. Do we really want the government regulating any free speech?
Well, I think we need, this is going to sound really bleak, but we need a lot of these boomers to retire. They need to go. Like, Nancy Pelosi needs to leave. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think that her time has come.
100%.
I worked for another House leadership member.
Okay.
And he worked pretty closely with Nancy Pelosi. They did not like each other very much, but they had to work together. Okay. And he was old then. And he was kind of priming someone to kind of, get into office. And he was his assistant, and he kind of put him into local government and everything. Right. So I think it's happening. But I think that we need, and I know this comes across sometimes as whatever, but we need age limits. There should be a mandatory retirement age for electoral politics. If you want to keep working after whatever age, fine. But you should not be allowed to 100%. Run for office, because if you are not
anything,
you're not going to be around to see the impact of the legislation you're currently passing. And actually, after I worked on the Hill, I worked in Michigan on a political campaign for a candidate who was part of that blue wave. She was, I think, 34 when she started running. Very moderate Democrat, believed in her platform was advanced manufacturing, IT. Pretty interesting. She still is on the technology committee. And I think that we need more of her, more of the younger people getting into office. The problem, there's a lot of problems, but the biggest problem, I think, is the top level, is that elections are expensive. I worked in electoral finance. Right. The political finance is a game that's very, it's kind of like blockchain. It's all transparent in a way, right. But it's very expensive to win a campaign. you need millions of dollars. You need a lot of money, and there's limits, right? So it's like you can only donate X amount, your wife can only donate
Right.
X amount, like, but then you can make it dark and it can get really weird. But like, you need money. And the people who have the name that people recognize will get the endorsements. If they get the endorsements, they get the money. And then it's easier for them to win. So it's like it's easier for Nancy Pelosi to win versus someone else who doesn't have the endorsements and won't get the money. So that's why I think that like the age limits have to happen, because like Nancy Pelosi needs to not be able to run. There's no name recognition. Then everyone is using, you know, the actual platforms to come up with their endorsements. And then from there, the voters decide based on who they think is actually the best candidate, and who has the most money. I mean, that's something that I still look at. I will, until the day I die, I will look at who has the most amount of money when I am voting, because like, unfortunately, if I love a candidate and I love their platform, but they have $5, like it's not going to work and I'm not going to waste my vote. So I think first age limits, then we need to overturn Citizens United. We need no more super PACs. That is absolutely
100%.
ridiculous. There is no reason. I do think, and this is something that maybe we should talk about this at some point, but like,
Right.
I want to invigorate and encourage more Bitcoiners, specifically crypto native people, to get involved in like political finance. I mean, as donors, because
I think it's happening.
We need it.
Crypto was the above pharma and oil. Crypto was the number one lobby in this last cycle. I mean, it's definitely happening. And A16Z and was it called Stand with Crypto? They endorsed a ton of candidates, and I think a lot of them won. So I mean, it's happening. I mean, that's where the Democrats just completely screwed up. They went after the crypto people. We had no beef with them until they started. No. Until they went after us, and they got me to basically not affiliate even remotely with their party anymore. Good job.
Well, and I think that is where the like individual donor relationships become very important, because quite honestly, like let's say you know, next year decide, for the next election cycle, you're like, all right, I'm going to take out $100,000 and I'm going to donate to all these candidates individually it shows up. Then what will happen is you do that, like, or let's say you do that in your midterm, a whole bunch of like little political like finance directors like me will see that and be like, oh shit, we need to talk to him. We have to get his number. Then they'll start calling you and they'll start pitching who they are to you. They'll start, you know, trying to get in front of you, figure out ways to, you know, like get you to vote for them. But when you're on the phone with these people, you can actually have conversations with them and be like, so what do you believe in? And you can say like, I believe that crypto should be like an unregulated asset, da, da, da. And it's just like, if you don't agree, then you can be like, okay, I don't necessarily think that I am the right donor for you. But like, you can shape. And if enough people are out here as individuals shaping the political spectrum of what they want to see, it will change who gets elected. And I think that like it has to happen from this guerrilla level, like on an individual level. If we become the next like mega donor class, they're not going to be able to avoid us because they won't be able
that's
to
already happening, I
win
think.
without us. But
you're saying it's just going to get more and more. Don't you feel? And then let's get away from politics and go back to
sorry. I'm like,
no.
To me, this is not about like policy, but I love like the little ins and outs of this stuff.
No, but my final question for you on the politics is: don't you feel like everybody, or most people are, once you get in, you think you're going to make a dent and you get in line and you are just bought. The very few politicians, to me, I feel like maybe they're too busy, and all the lobbyists and all these lobby groups and oil groups and pharma groups and the broke ass healthcare system groups are actually writing. I mean, look at Elizabeth Warren, that she and her number two, they admitted that the banking lobby wrote the entire crypto legislation. Be like, gee, have you read it? Like I used to back when she fought the banks like 10, 12 years ago. I don't know if it was all a lie, but I used to actually I was like, good for you. Cause the banks are completely have monopolies and are corrupt. And now she's tighter with them than ever. Like, don't you feel like everybody is just bought in DC, or is that too cynical and we can change this?
I think that we buy them. I think that's the solution. It's just we buy them, because there's currently no like skin in the game for crypto on the Hill, really. I mean, it doesn't really exist. And I think that like because we don't have a seat at the table, there's no one to represent what we actually want. And of course, they're just going to be able to like run rampant with whatever they are interested in. I do think that in time, and I hate to say this because it's kind of sad, but like because we're kind of losing our like middle class, and I do believe crypto has the ability to like eliminate inflation if, you know, used properly. I think we actually could eliminate a lot of our economic problems with crypto.
You'd have to thread the needle, and it'll take a long time, but it seems possible. Yeah, I've seen theories.
Yeah. There's a way, you know, but I think that we could become the next, like, I don't want to say like ruling class because I don't like those terms, but like we could become the people who buy the politicians. And I hate to use it that way, but like then
it's sad but
ideally,
true. I mean, sad but true.
I think Citizens United still needs to be overturned. I still think there needs to be
100%.
age limits. I still think that like more people in crypto need to like donate individually to candidates, and make a splash. You know, you're max donating, not $50. I'm talking like 6,000. You know, like donate. The numbers that they'll call you after they see it, you know, because they do. That's the thing, especially with like house members and stuff like those races are run out of people's houses. They're real people. And like, they'll call you, they'll see that and they'll call you and then you have their line, you know, it's like that becomes, I mean, unfortunately, like that is what like the Koch brothers did with all of these like libertarian judges. It was, however you feel about the policy, it was intelligent as fuck to be able to put all of these like local level people with their ideology into local government. Like it's genius, and we just have to play that game, and we're not doing it as like a crypto, you know, ecosystem. So I think that is how we could like affect like real change, and I think we should, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think that's well put. So as we unwind back to art, I wanted to ask you before. No. I told you we go down like this. These are the conversations I love because we're not like tell me about the inspiration behind your art. Like, I mean, we look at your art, like we can look at it and it's awesome. But I want you to, if you could give my daughter any advice on financial literacy, what would you tell a young girl or young woman?
How old is she?
Middle school.
Middle school.
I like your pause.
Does she do chores for money?
Yeah.
Right now? Mm-hmm. Put a fraction of the chores for money that you have now into an IRA. Even if your parents have an IRA for you, because the compounding interest right now will grow so much until even you graduate high school. Then you look at that, right? From now to high school, end of high school, you get to college, you can then convert some of that money at that point. What I would do is convert some of that into crypto. But I always believe in having some money like above the iceberg just to have it.
Of course.
But the compounding interest of being in middle school, like all the leaves you rake can become like a really comfortable college experience for you and beyond college experience for you. And the sooner you start saving money as a like young person with compounding interest, the more money you'll have over time. So even if you put $5 a month into that, because you're, you know, a little tot, it'll become a lot more later and you'll have a real potato. That's what I would say.
We just ate potatoes last night.
I love potatoes.
We've talked a lot about, and you've mentioned your dad a lot. I know he was huge influence in a lot of the art you do. Tell us about him. Was he in your childhood? Was it supportive? Was it you guys chat a lot?
I'm going to get a little not PG here, just because it's the only way I can tell the story. So I was before like the moment. We actually hung out a lot. I mean, my dad and I always have been really close. I feel like from the time my personality started to come out, my parents realized like, oh, she's like you know, like we always have just been kind of like this. I have a lot of memories of going into DC on Saturdays with him and like going to different monuments and museums and stuff. That was like what we did together. And I think that made like a huge difference. And it was just me and him. You know, we would take the metro in and we would go, and it would just be him and I time. And I'm really glad he did that with me. And then when I was 13, I started to get into like some juvenile delinquents. And I was arrested and hospitalized for alcohol poisoning when I was 13.
Ooh,
And
I'm
my
sorry.
dad, like, it's okay. My dad, like, sat me down and he was like, you need to learn a little bit about like peer pressure. And like, we had this whole conversation and it changed my relationship with him. He told me things about himself and his family that I did not know. And it was just very vulnerable, and it really like bonded us, and we've kind of been like best friends ever since. Which is kind of funny because I feel like he has like so many beliefs that like I don't necessarily agree with, especially like financially. I'm just like,
Sure.
why would you do that? You know, like, but we have this ability to like talk about these things without like a lack of respect. Like there's always like respect there. I feel bad. Like on Christmas, I called my mom's phone because I wanted to mostly talk to her, because I usually call my dad and I wanted it to, I wanted to balance it out. And then him and I just start talking about like Luigi Mangione. And I was just like, oh my God, I have to call you later in a few days because I feel
this
bad.
This is a different conversation. This is our daily, this is a Christmas conversation.
Like we are eliminating my mom from this conversation. I don't want to do that, So I was like, I'm going to get off the phone with you because him and I can just go down these little rabbit holes, know? But we've just been really close like since that happened, and I think I've told him everything. I've never been the kind of person to lie to my parents and be like, oh, I'm sleeping over at Sarah's house and then going to like a party. Like I've never been that person. I always just told them what I was doing. And I think that like my mom and I've learned just has her own like, vulnerability, like hangups, and that's just who she is, and that's okay. But him and I have always been able to just be super vulnerable with each other. I think I'm a lot like his mom, and I think that kind of like when I talk to his mom, it's the same thing. I mean, we're just all three of us. I feel like we're like those little meerkats in the like the heat lamp. Like that's us. Like it's I don't know. It's just kind of what it is. But I feel like for some reason, like him and I have always just been very close.
Sounds like he was able to be very vulnerable and very open and at the right times too, because sometimes as a dad and as a parent, you can offer advice at the wrong times. Like my whole thing is like, wait, from the other side is like, wait until they're chatty. It's always usually before bedtime, but it's like, wait before they're chatty and open and like you flow in their river, don't push, don't try and push them, be like, whoa, because once you start giving the lessons right away, they're like, and shut down. And if you do it long enough, they're just not going to share crap with you anymore, and that's huge. It sounds like your dad was, you had that moment, which is beautiful, but you also, it sounds like he knew, he spent time with you and he knew when to have serious conversations and when to not press, maybe. Is that fair?
Yeah, he definitely, I mean, for lessons, yes, he would often like be like, come here and talk to me about this like space thing, because my mom didn't want to listen to it, and I'd be like, oh my God, shut up. And he'll still sometimes do that, where like I'll be like talking to my parents, like both of them, and like if we're in the same room, I'll like look at my mom and I can tell like neither of us are listening, and then we'll both just start laughing, because like my dad, I feel like I have like his sense of like intellect and depth, but like my mom is super fucking goofy and creative, and I feel like I embody like all of that, and it's like I definitely have both of them. So it's just like a very like different relationship, like my parents, I'd say, are like two very like distant like Venn diagrams, and like the things in the middle are like their values, but they're very different people. It works for them. They're kind of like the opposites that attract. But I'm kind of both. And because of that, it's like really interesting because like my relationship is night and day different with them.
Are either of them artists?
They're both very creative people.
They are.
My
Okay.
dad, well, my dad's a computer programmer, which I mean, I was always like, how did you become the computer programmer? His dad was a professional like linguist for the army. He like taught people Russian in the army. And then his mom is a classically trained oil painter who went to school for comparative literature. And his sister was like a botanist. I was like, how did you become the programmer? And he was like, this is super like artistic. This is like a language. This is not like, yeah, you have to follow like some binary, but like this is not like this is an art. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And my mom's very creative. She's always been very creative. And her dad was a carpenter, and her mom stayed at home, but she groomed dogs. That was like the thing she did for fun. So it's like I have it on both sides of being like just very creative. But they're very creative in different ways, I'd say.
And it sounds like you inherited both. It sounds like you did collages and you're like 12 or 13, you started doing them. Were they very supportive of you being an artist? Was it just for fun as a kid, or early on were you like, oh, I really like this?
I didn't think that I wanted it to be a job. I wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. But I think that was like a limiting belief that I kind of held, where it's just like, oh, like art isn't a job. It can't be a job, you know, and like there's no reason to like go to school for this.
Right.
I think that like my dad just wanted me to like make money and stop using his. I think that was pretty put it bluntly. I think that was really what it was for him. He just wanted me to be off the payroll, which very fair. You know, I think once that happened, he was very happy. Right. But like, I think that they always kind of were supportive of anything I wanted to do. It wasn't like you have to be a doctor. I never had that. I'm really grateful I never had that. But my parents made it very clear to me. They were like, you should do something viable, you know, whatever it is, just make it viable. I'm actually glad I didn't go to art school, just because I've heard so many horror stories that it like forces you through like a bottleneck of what you need to be. And I don't believe that having more access to galleries is worth that. So I'm glad that never happened. But yeah, no, they're both, I mean, oh my God, I will get DMs from random people that my dad will meet and be like, I just met your dad and he told me to message you. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Like,
wait, because he's trying to hook you up, or because he's like, wait, my daughter's interested in that too. Talk to her about this. Or
I
both.
have no idea. I think it's him trying to hook me up and be like, this is her and you should message her. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. Oh my God. Like they'll send me selfies with my dad. They'll be like, we have to take a selfie. And it's like a whole thing. Like people will message me and be like, I just talked to your dad. Like he's really supportive. And I do really like that. I'm very grateful that that's the way that it is, and not like, you know, the opposite where they like don't acknowledge it. But yeah, it was never like, I thought that artists had to be like weird little introverts that like drew all the time. And you had to be really good at drawing and hate social skills. Like that's what I thought an artist was. And then I learned that like, that's just a personality type and has nothing to do with the art you make.
Yeah. I think that mold is changing. And I think it's because we're seeing like, you know, I collect one of your pieces from the Astronomer's Daughter. Like whereas galleries keep, I don't want to say they keep artist and collector separate, but they kind of do. It's a wall. It's like where you get to appreciate things from afar, and then the artist maybe can make this image of themselves looking up at the heavens with their twill cap and, you know, like the stereotypical. And now we've broken that. Well, I think we all like picture probably the same, like 5 people, but we have this ecosystem where we can all communicate and connect, and it brings thinkers, coders, and all of us together. And I think that's why what's happening in this Ordinals Bitcoin soup right now is so powerful and so beautiful.
I agree. I think there's upsides and downsides to collectors and artists mingling. I think that it can be really great. like, I think, like, you know, being able to talk with you and Steven and like all of the collectors from the Astronomer's Daughter, to be honest, like I curated it really well. So it was all people that like I want to get on the phone with for an hour.
Right.
That's honestly like, I mean, that's how I pre-sold them. I just got on the phone with people for an hour and asked them about the collection. So it was like all those people I was like, perfect. Like, you're the people I want to be talking to. You're the people I want to have my art.
Right.
But like, I do think that sometimes it can be harmful because like artists have emotions. Artists have big emotions usually. So when an artist gets on the timeline and they start saying things that like, quite honestly are valid, but not necessarily intended for a collector to see, like they're things that should have been shared in the salon among the artists, it can get kind of dicey because then it kind of like hurts an artist's reputation because what they're saying is valid, but it's just not hitting the intended audience entirely. And it can be very hard. And I think the solution to that is just like, one, like talk to people privately about your problems and your concerns, but also like, I think that because collectors are here, they're seeing that artists have big emotions and it is changing, but like we need to not necessarily like fault an artist for having like big emotions. But on the flip side, I think the same thing happens with collectors. I think collectors will say things like, oh, I think open editions are horrible and I hate that artists like have a lot of supply and scarcity is important. And it's just like, I think that conversation is very harmful for an artist to hear in the same way. It's like the same thing. It's like that conversation is intended for an audience of collectors.
Trying to define who you are as an artist, even though they might not be speaking to you, they're speaking in general. You're saying an artist can hear this. And you and I talked at the beginning of the show about really opening your own heart, following your own path. That can, just like art school, start to like pigeonhole you into like, well, this is how you're supposed to do it. And all of a sudden you're following someone else's vision of what you think you're supposed to be as a digital Bitcoin, ordinal, NFT, blockchain artist. Like that's interesting.
I would agree with that entirely. And I think there are some artists who like we were saying earlier too, it's like they don't know themselves the way that maybe they like can or they could, you know? And like because social media, you don't necessarily have like the intended audience always seeing it entirely. Like I try to address things to people. Like if I say like artists, I like don't want a collector to be like, well, I don't, it's like, yeah, it's not intended for you. It's the letter is not addressed to you. Don't read it. But like, I do think that there are like moments where it's like these conversations can be limiting because there are some artists that they'll see a collector's take and the collector will say like, you know, the sky is green and left is right. And they'll be like, oh my God, you're so right, GM, because they just want a sale, you know? And it's just like, I don't think that
I got it. So the collector like, oh my God, he might buy something. So I'm going to actually change like what I'm saying just to close the sale because you know what, dude, I don't really want to talk to you anymore because I don't really agree, but you're saying it can get tricky fast.
It can. I don't think that's the collector's problem though, because the collector believes that, you know what I mean? They believe the sky is green and left is right, and that's fine. But like the artist doesn't have to do that. But I think that because some artists, especially in this space, because it's like we have artists that are in all different places in their career, you know, it's like we can't be sitting here comparing like a novice to like Rafiq Anadol. Like they're completely different, but like they're on the same timeline. So I think that like generally speaking, it can be kind of like detrimental for artists. And I think that the reason for artists to like learn themselves is because you don't want to fall into this like trap of like not knowing yourself and like falling into like audience capture where you're just like doing things for your audience to intend to see things. Like there are some artists that I know and it's just like they came into the space like super Instagramified and now they have like PFPs and like they're degenning all the time. And maybe that's like a natural transition of what they want to be doing. But like, I can't help but think like how much of this is like what you actually want and how much of this is like you like kind of not knowing where you're going and just like kind of chasing the feeling of community, you know? Like the only reason that my PFP is my Taproot Witch is because they made it for me. And I find that fucking awesome. You know what I mean? Like it's an honorary, it's mine. I like love that, you know, it's like, otherwise, like I'm also just waiting for my photographer to come back in town so we can do a new photo shoot. But it's just
but they're fun. And again, it's a sense of belonging. So
yeah.
Who are your biggest influences? Like, you started in ETH. It's funny. Like I told you, we're going to get to the art for like 5 minutes, but you started in ETH. You've made beautiful collections. Obviously here we're looking at your first Ordinals collection drop, the Astronomer's Daughter, which you are the daughter, and your dad was obviously the NASA 43-year astronomer. So what does being on Ordinals mean to you? Is Ordinals home now, or are you a multi-chain girl depending on projects?
I don't care personally. I like Ordinals the best. I'll be honest. I really do. I like the people the most. Like I was in London in October because I got asked to speak at Ordinals London.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like, the first night before the actual event, we all went out to dinner. And at the very end of the dinner, I started talking with this guy who wasn't even sitting at our table. We're just like talking. And I find out he is like, a sponsor and this and that. And he's like been involved in Bitcoin. And I swear, like, the entire room just went silent. Like, this conversation, I was like so locked in to like us talking about Bitcoin and talking about like the Astronomer's Daughter. And just like, it was like this moment where everything just kind of clicked, and it's just like, I don't have every moment I've had with someone like that in this space has had a significant relationship with Bitcoin. I will put it that way. There are people who mostly are involved on ETH. That's kind of their thing. But they have had a significant relationship with Bitcoin, even if they are mostly on ETH, right? And I think that
Bitcoin,
is significant.
the coin itself, like they were,
yeah.
Because that is true for me. Like when I was in ETH NFTs, like it was almost like I stacked my sats, and that was always my biggest long-term savings of anything. But ETH was where I played, and then I got into staking and all that stuff, and it was fun. But once Ordinals came, I was like, and there's a couple things. If it's fully on chain on ETH, fully on chain, because even a lot of things that appear fully on chain aren't, because the contract can be changed because it's not closed out. But in Bitcoin, all those problems are solved, and you have parent-child and provenance and recursion and sat days, like with Astronomer's Daughter. I mean, one of the beautiful things is each day in the moon cycle is also the day of the sat, correct?
Yep. That's the whole point. And I couldn't have done this incredible. On ETH. That's the thing. Yeah, this doesn't exist on ETH because there's no sat dates. You know what I mean? Like there's no sat block times. There's none of that on ETH. And I think that, like, for me, like, the one holdup I have is like, it is so expensive to inscribe something right now on like L1 Bitcoin. So it's like I've done a few like smaller releases on ETH since the Astronomer's Daughter. Okay. But like, to me, it's stuff that I've been asked to do. Like the two that I'm thinking about, one was for a show, and then the other one was for a charity auction. So it's just kind of like, I'm not going to say no to those things.
Of course.
But like, I think that I want to put my work on the chain that has the best expression of like the blockchain as the medium, because to me, that's what's important. You know what I mean? Like, my work is in Target. Go buy it there if you want off-chain stuff. You know what I mean? Like, one of my goals next year is to stop selling prints. I want someone else to sell them for me, like, Urban Outfitters.
Someone who does it well. Sure. Yeah. You don't want to waste your time doing that.
Like, just get out of my website. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you want my stuff that is like on chain, I'm going to use the blockchain as a medium. I'm going to make it dynamic. I'm going to use, sat block times. I'm going to use like recursion. I'm going to use parent child. Like, those things are important to me. Like, otherwise, like, what is the point of putting it on chain? Because as far as I'm concerned, and some people get mad at me when I say this, galleries take money and they don't care as much about authenticity. like you can put a, certificate of authenticity behind a painting and that counts and that's fine. And that world is open to you.
Right.
If you want it to be about crypto, you want it to be about blockchain, in my opinion, you should be using blockchain as the medium. I firmly believe in that. And like, I think that like, that is my ethos. I've thought about putting some stuff on ETH just because it's like doing the data night is a little bit like easier, but it's not impossible on Bitcoin. And I like it on Bitcoin anyway.
Yeah, no, I think
so
that's a good answer. And one thing you said that was very interesting to me. You said Bitcoin was the best expression of using the blockchain. It sounds like it has kind of the most variables, kind of the most varied, interesting canvas, but you didn't even bring up what I always think is the number one point. To me, it is the most immutable, long-standing, like your art now, even though it was expensive to inscribe on there, it's now there on chain forever.
Yeah. And that, I was going to say eventually, is like, I have this, like, I studied history and I have this like fascination with, I hate this that I say it this way because it can come across as like kind of like weird, but like I have this fascination with like the original way things are intended to be. And I've gained later in life the appreciation for how things evolve, but like I've always been so fascinated in like the original version of things, right? And like to me, the original version of, truly like blockchain, or as it was originally described, time chain,
right,
is Bitcoin. Like, and that's what, it's so fascinating that like, it's the thing that stands the test of time. So, I mean, even when I heard about the space, I was like, okay, when are NFTs coming to Bitcoin though? Like that was my first question to someone, was just like, okay, ETH, cool, but like, when is it coming to Bitcoin?
Well,
because that
you,
was,
Casey.
I mean, I know, thank God he eventually showed up. Like to me, Bitcoin was the thing that I like bought and, sold drugs on the Silk Road with. It was used as a decentralized PayPal at the time. It wasn't like, let me hold this for an asset. It was like, this is encrypted, money. But like, it's cool to think that like this asset has helped people do things that maybe are illegal. Okay. But like, I don't do those things anymore. You can hair test me. I've been sober for 8.5 years, but like, it's just like, thanks. Yeah. But it's like, it's kind of funny. It's like, these things are so different compared to what it was initially used for. And I've learned to appreciate that like evolution, but there's a reason that it has stood the test of time. Like there's a reason that Bitcoin still exists the way that it does. And what was the other one that was popular with ETH? Was it XRP? Is that
with ETH, we mean with like NFTs and stuff
around the ETH time? No, this was like 2017. I feel like it was like,
yeah, XRP. There were so many ICO shit.
That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, XRP, Cardano. There's 100 of them.
But that's the thing, is just like they've all kind of had their meta and kind of fallen away, but like Bitcoin has kind of stayed. And like, it's really the people that, again, I mean, it really goes back to every person that I've had like a really significant relationship with in this space has had a significant experience with Bitcoin. And that makes a huge difference for me. Like, I don't know if you know Art Pleb. If you don't, he's great. He mostly is like ETH NFTs, but like the day I met him, he was wearing a Mount Gox t-shirt. And I was like, dude, like that's, and like, he was like, I wear this because people don't know what it is. And then when they know, I know that I need to be friends with them. And I'm like, yes, like you get it, And it's just like, I didn't even realize who he was. He just like introduced himself to me as his like government name. And I was like, hi, okay, who are you? And then we started talking and I was like, and then he told me who he was. And I was like, oh shit, like this is, we've talked online, but it was like, I didn't even need that to get into the conversation.
That's awesome.
With him,
He gives you the real world name first. And then when he's like, okay, I like this girl, I trust her. And he's going to give you his artistic handle. That's a very interesting comment though, that you have a relationship with Bitcoin. So beyond the art, you're right. There's a deep relationship with actual Bitcoin itself. And I'm trying to think, I was in the ETH ecosystem for a while. Obviously you were, so many of us have been. I don't know if my relationship with ETH is the same as Bitcoin. And maybe that's because Bitcoin is first, or maybe because it was the true value of savings to an nest egg, non-inflatable nest egg. But that's a concept I haven't thought about it there, that yes, ordinals on chain and all the stuff you could do, I thought about, and that I love Bitcoin, but the fact that Bitcoin actually, part of the art that you have with Astronomer's Daughter, everyone has on there, there's that underlying Bitcoin that resonates so deeply with us too.
Yeah, and I think like there's an element too of like, I hate to say it this way because it kind of comes off as like weird. Two things. First, I think ETH is going to be the chain that people build protocols on. I think that ETH-L2s are going to be really helpful for corporations, and they're going to be helpful for people building things, like there's some really cool startups coming out right now, that have good funding, that are doing really interesting things on ETH. And like, it's not really a place for Bitcoin, right? I think that is like a good use case. I don't think that the art is a bad use case by any means. I think that, if you care about things being on chain, then it becomes a little bit of a different conversation. But I do think that like when it comes to Bitcoin too, I mean, as weird as this sounds, like people on my Instagram still talk about the Astronomer's Daughter. And I mentioned that it's like on chain, and the fact that it's on Bitcoin, they actually have like, oddly, these are like total normies. They have like more respect for it because they understand what Bitcoin is. I think Bitcoin is going to be, isn't that weird? Like they're like, oh yeah, whatever.
I was going to do a charity thing with one of the biggest IRL artists, one of the bigger ones in the US. And they were like, I love the idea. It's genius, but I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. We did something on ETH, and the backlash on ETH, they're like, it's proof of stake. Like it's not even, but the whole energy thing with Bitcoin, that FUD was so had permeated so much in normie culture that they got such a backlash. They're like, I can't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Now, I don't know, that was last year. I don't know if it'd still be true, but I think it's going to take a while for some of those to thaw. So I'm surprised that your group was like, oh, it's on Bitcoin. It's actually art on Bitcoin. Like they actually understood that. I would think that would turn them off.
They were more interested in what it was versus the fact that it was on Bitcoin, but they didn't care. There was no one who was like, ew, this is like horrible for the environment. Because I think people are realizing that just like digital processing is really bad for the environment. Your emails are really bad for the environment. TikTok is really bad for the environment. Like it's not just AI and crypto that's bad. Like I think people are starting to wake up to that it's just like you posting hate comments is bad for the environment, like, and you see, like, especially some of these trolls who seem to do it a lot. It's like, that might be worse for the environment than someone who has like a transaction every like 3 weeks through their ledger, like, you're kind of using more energy than they are by spewing a bunch of hate on the internet about how much you hate Bitcoin. And I think that like, I do understand though, in 2021, I mean, I didn't talk about it at all on Instagram. Nope, no way. I didn't say a word about like super rare until like 2022. I didn't say anything just because I did not want people to build that association and like hate me, because there was a lot of hate. There was a lot of hate. I'm very grateful that my audience is not on Twitter, because there are artists whose majority art, there are artists who the majority of their audience is on Twitter. And because of that, they never got into this space because they don't want to lose their primary source of income. Because if they alienate their Twitter followers who buy their shirts and whatever else, they're not going to make any money. And if it doesn't work, then that's a risk they're not willing to take, because you can't go backwards.
That's a scary one, to following your truth and possibly having even way more upside. You and I both know you probably could and would, especially if you already had the following. But if you're so worried about losing them, you might have a massive revenue hiccup. And if that's your main source of income, then that would be a scary thing. So we're getting right around the 2-hour mark. Like I can honestly talk to you for like 6 or 7 hours.
We can keep going, or we can stop. Like we can
I want to do another one with you, but I want to finish with because I know you just posted like a couple days ago looking for new books. You're reading a book every week in 2025, which I think my daughter's going, I don't know, it was 52, but it was a lot. Like she's a big reader and she likes the physical book, and you're right. So maybe Gen Z really really is more into the physical things. And my son likes kind of like tactile and physical things as well. What 3 books, or let's simplify this. If you could make me, based on our conversation, what book is one of your favorites that I have to read? And this is for me. And then we're going to do it for everybody.
That I read this year?
Well, do both. Do this year, do all time.
I mean, I think you should read that Read, Write, Own book. I already mentioned that one.
Oh, about the A16Z guy, Chris Dixon.
Yeah, Chris Dixon.
So that really made an impact on you. Okay.
I mean, just based on the conversation we had. If you're interested in the political stuff, I would read Dark Money by Jane Mayer. That's a really good book. Or if you're interested in how the Trump presidency in 2020 kind of got funky, because internally there was a lot of like turmoil.
Right.
There's a book called The Room Where It Happened. I don't remember who wrote it, but he used to be Trump's defense secretary. And he just goes into like candid detail about like what kind of happened in that presidency. The first one, because he basically like, I had a lot of friends who like worked for the RNC, and like they were so excited because like in the political world, like if you work for a party and then the like candidate that of that party gets elected, it's job opportunity time. Like there are so many security deposits that get just like folded after an election because people expected to win and then they don't. So then they don't move to DC. It's like something like $500,000 in security deposits just like fold. It's so crazy. And like, so all my Republican friends were like, this is amazing. Like, I'm going to get a great opportunity. Like, and one of my friends, he actually worked in the White House. He was like the deputy like media correspondent or something like before Sanders Huckabee or whatever. Yeah. And he left. He'd straight left. And he's like straight, like stick ticket Republican, like very, very solid resume. And he left. And that just, I don't know, the whole, like, not from a like policy standpoint, but like from a like backdoor, like political operative standpoint, that presidency was like insane. It went from like the super straight ticket Republicans who like deserved to be there from like their seniority to like people who he wanted, who maybe that was better, but like from their perspective, they were like, what is going on right now? This is a chicken coop, you know? So it's an interesting book from that perspective.
No, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So those are the two books I would
what defines, so we'll close with what 3 books or 1 or whatever, what defines you? Like if you had to pick 1 or 2 or 3, like, and you could just say the titles, you can go into it. Like what, if I had to know who you were, like at the soul,
I love this.
What would it be? And you read so many books, you're like, oh my God, this is so tough. It's like, what's your favorite, who's your favorite band? What's your favorite album? Be like, I have like 180 of them. Come
on. Dr. Sleep by Stephen King.
Oh.
Who Cooked the Last Supper by Rosalind Miles. And The Great Gatsby.
Oh.
By F. Scott Fitzgerald. If I had to give you 3 books, 2 fiction, I guess, which is fine, but whatever. Those are who I am as a person, for sure. So
I love it. I love it. Well, Natasha, it has been, like I said, I could go on for 6 hours, but I almost want to leave us and everybody wanting more. But this conversation has been awesome. It was just as candid and as open as I hoped it would be. I hope you had a good time on the show, but it's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. This is exactly what I wanted on like the weird free fall between Christmas and New Year's. It's perfect.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do anything this week. And then I was like, you had reached out. I felt like crap the last couple of weeks. And finally I started to feel better. I'm like, wait, why start with a new year? Let's, we've got these little pockets. Let's do it. So, but it was great connecting with you. Look at the outro. Did you see on the intro what I was talking about?
No, I had it on my phone, but no, I
Oh,
need to
so
look
it's
at
super
it.
teeny. Is the screen small for you? But you can look at it after. But some of your art may or may not be in the intro and the outro. So with that said, Natasha Postwook, follow her. Astronomer's Daughter. That's on Ordinals. She's got a bunch of collections from 21, 22, and 23 on Ethereum. They're all beautiful. We scrolled through them through this show. But check her out. Follow her on Twitter. I know I do. And Natasha, it was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.